Hello and welcome back to the third and final instalment of my special 13th Horseman, pictured here, New Zealand launch day video thing. Woo, woo. I'm going to answer some questions sent in by the fantastic Zach Harding, who's somewhere there with you now, unless you're watching this online, because that would be really creepy if he was standing behind you in your bedroom watching you watch me on screen. He's not doing that. He's at the book launch in New Zealand. Hello. So if you're at the book launch in New Zealand, then he's there. Just to clarify, if you're watching at home on screen somewhere else in the world, he's almost certainly not there. So don't worry. Anyway, Zach sent in some questions for me. So let's see. Let's have a look. No, that was rubbish. No, that was rubbish. Where are we? Here we go. There are 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: war, famine, pestilence and death. Which horseman is the reader's favourite? It's a tricky question. In my experience, everyone has a different favourite. Pestilence always seems very popular. War is quite popular as well. Drake, pictured there. Death, he is Death. Is quite popular, being the kind of hero of the story. Famine doesn't seem to get, you know, as much popularity. People don't like Famine as much because he's so hideous, I think, because he's constantly eating. But so Famine's kind of my favourite because nobody else likes him. He's kind of the underdog, and even though all he does is eat and be really horrible, he comes good at the end, and he manages to help save the day. So I really like Famine. Famine's my personal favourite of the lot. Although I think there's part of me in all of them. I'm tall and Scottish like War. I've got Famine's chins, and probably actually not like Pestilence at all. That's not true. Although I love musical theatre, so does Pestilence. I don't really. Anyway, next question. Where are we? Let's think of another one. Drake takes on the role of Death even though he doesn't really want to. That's very true. Have you ever been given a job you really didn't want to do? Well, kind of. I've been, I used to work, I used to have to do real jobs before I became a writer full time. I always wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a writer since I was about 9 years old. And I kind of wrote a few screenplays, and I almost became massively successful, and then the film companies went bust and nothing ever happened. So I had to get a proper job, and it turns out that I'm not very good at doing proper jobs. And I went through about 14 proper jobs in 8 years, getting fired from every single one of them. And the reason I kept getting fired is that I have a very overactive imagination, and I tend to daydream quite a lot. The last job that I had was the job I probably disliked the most. I was a team manager in a call centre for BT, British Telecom. Not entirely sure how that happened, but I was. There were 5 team managers in the call centre, and there was one big boss, and the big boss was a terrifying woman called Carol. Now I'm 6'4". Carol was taller than me. Carol was wider than me. If you can imagine the Incredible Hulk wearing a dress, that's pretty much what Carol looked like. Not quite so green, but definitely just as angry all the time. And every week we would have these team meetings, and Carol would call the team managers into this little room, and we'd sit and talk about really boring stuff that had been going on in the call centre that week. They would all talk, I would sit and daydream looking out the window, not really paying any attention, but Carol had this really bad habit of picking on people. She'd be talking about something, then she would suddenly stop, and she'd point to one of the team managers and demand to know what they were thinking. So she'd be banging on about something, then she would suddenly stop and go, "John, tell me what you're thinking." And John would say, I'm thinking about ways of cutting costs and making the centre run more efficiently. And Carol would go, "Very good, John. Well done." And she would carry on talking. Or she would go, "Marie, tell me what you're thinking." And Marie would go, "Oh, I'm thinking of ways of making everybody work harder." And Carol would go, "Oh, excellent, Marie. Well done." and she would carry on talking. The problem was that I was never thinking anything along those lines, and there came the day when George, the big boss of BT in Scotland, came up and was sitting in on our management meeting listening to us talking about the usual boring stuff, and as usual I was looking out the window kind of daydreaming, not really paying any attention, and suddenly I heard my name mentioned and Carol said, "Barry, tell me what you're thinking." And I thought, I've got two options here. I could lie to her, I could tell her I'm thinking about cutting costs or making everybody work harder, or I could just be honest and I could tell her the truth and tell her what I'm really thinking. And I thought, I'll just be honest. What harm could that possibly do? So when she said, "Barry, tell me what you're thinking," I said, "Alright Carol, I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, what would we all do if a monkey walked in that door now, carrying a gun?" And the room went completely silent, and all the other team managers just kind of backed slowly away from me. And George, the big boss, called Carol over and whispered in her ear, and 2 days after that I stopped working for that company as well. So that's probably the least favourite job I've ever had. I don't like doing real jobs. I like sitting about making stuff up and talking nonsense like this. So that's what I like doing. So that was probably my least favourite of all my jobs, of my many jobs. The Horsemen are quite fond of board games. If you had to play board games to fill in thousands of years, which ones would you choose? If I'm honest, I really hate board games. Most board games really bore me, especially Monopoly. I hate Monopoly. My son makes me play Monopoly and it takes like 15 years to play a game of Monopoly. So that I would probably go quite quickly mad then. I quite like fast-paced games. Buckaroo, they played Buckaroo at one point I think. I quite like Buckaroo. Everyone likes Buckaroo. So, right, one more question we'll do. Let's see. Famine seems to eat pretty much anything and often stores food under the folds of fat around his body, which we discussed earlier, if you will remember. If you were Famine, what are 5 things that you wouldn't eat? If I was Famine, I'd eat anything. Famine eats literally anything. He kind of makes an attempt or makes an offer to eat a giant robot at one point, but then decides it would take too long. Speaking as myself, 5 things I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't eat a baby. I wouldn't eat my own legs. I wouldn't eat... You see, what do you call it? What's that program they do in Australia again? I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Where they eat bugs and unpleasant bits of kangaroo. I wouldn't eat that. I wouldn't... I actually don't like... I sound like such a child. I don't like eating green stuff. I don't like eating lettuce or cucumber or what's the other one called? Broccoli, stuff like that. I can't abide that. So I wouldn't eat that. Is that 4? If you count green stuff as one. What else wouldn't I eat? The sun. I wouldn't eat the sun because I would melt before I got there. So that's 5 things I wouldn't eat. Yeah, so that's it. That's our question and answer session finished. I think. I don't know how many I answered, or if I even really answered any of them. I think I just spoke for a bit. But I tried my best. So yes, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to those of you who are at the launch event with Zach Harding. Thanks for coming. Don't forget to buy books because they're great. And for those of you who aren't, just to reiterate, Zach Harding is not in your house. There's no need to inform the authorities. So thank you all very much again. Have fun, enjoy the cakes, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.